Welcome to the American Institute of Healthcare Professionals videogram on unresolved anger and trauma. And this video correlates mostly with our anger management consulting program, as well as with our grief counseling program, because past trauma can leave unresolved anger issues. And the purpose of this video is to discuss why unresolved anger is bad and how to overcome it in a healthy way so that healing can proceed. And of course, with any type of trauma, there's the element of PTSD that one deals with, the problems of restoring intimacy, problems of overcoming guilt. So anger is just one of the myriad of various emotions that individuals struggle with. So it's important to release unhealthy, unresolved anger. And because it's associated with trauma, it is extremely highly charged. It's unhealthy emotionally, physically, and mentally as well, because it puts you in a constant state. It puts the individual in a constant state of anxiety. And with that type of anxiety induces various stress responses, and that stresses the various organs in the body as well as the immune system. Mentally, it steals peace from the individual, and it instills instead resentment and hatred and revenge, which consume the individual in some cases to an obsessive level that is very, very unhealthy. So one must release anger in a healthy way to heal. The anger is there for a reason. And it is not a bad emotion in itself. It's just being bottled up. And when it bottles up, it can become corrupted and it become a danger to your overall health. So even though the trauma that someone experienced is horrible, maybe someone was raped or abused, or someone experienced someone do something so inhumane, we have to be able to release the anger itself. We have to ask ourselves, or the victim must ask themselves, him or herself, what is blocking forgiveness? Is it an idea that there is an unforgivable notion or ideal that this individual is so evil that, or what they did is so evil that it can never ever be forgiven, and I must always remain angry at it? So that's something one must ask. Also, some individuals are blocked from forgiveness due to bitterness or anger to protect themselves from future hurt and to protect oneself. And the other concept blocking forgiveness might be, if I forgive this individual, then I have very low self-esteem for myself. How can I forgive someone who did this horrible thing to me? I would be, in essence, betraying myself, or I'd be betraying what the individual did to another person that I care about. So what is blocking the forgiveness? Are there conceived notions that some things are unforgivable? Is it a self-defense mechanism? Or do you feel that you are going to betray yourself? I think the big thing is we have to understand what forgiveness is. If you can understand what forgiveness is, then maybe you can start to release, or the individual can start to release some of that anger. So forgiveness is not about minimizing the offense, to lessening it, saying it doesn't matter. It's not forgetting the offense either. You don't have to forget. You can forgive, but you never forget, is a saying. So forgiving doesn't involve minimizing. It doesn't consider forgetting. It doesn't even justify condoning or trusting the individual. What it is, though, is freeing oneself from future pain and the torment of anger itself to try to find peace and healing. It's freeing oneself from the destructive road of revenge. But it is not any way, shape, or form minimizing or forgetting or condoning or trusting again. The forgiveness is really more for your own, or the individual's own well-being. And it's a pivotal first step. Now, through forgiveness, we need to be able to also release anger and experience it in a healthy way. And sometimes that's through therapy, where an individual can let some anger out in a healthy way to experience that emotion, but not in its initial charged, raw state. Also, understanding that the emotion is not bad. Most of the time, anger is justified. But we also need to ask, as we release it, is the anger we're now holding, or the person holding, is it proportionate to the offense itself? And also, is it displaced? Say an individual was abused by a man. Are you angry, or is the individual angry at all men? Is it displaced towards another individual that never did anything wrong? Or is the anger displaced maybe at a race or a nation, because maybe the individual was of a certain ethnic or religious background? So it's important to gain an understanding of the anger. It's also important to identify where it's aimed at. Who are you angry at? Are you more angry at the offender, the situation, the others, or is there anger towards oneself regarding it? So it's important to understand where it is. Now, after we understand where it is, healing is something that is critical. But how do we find healing after we release that anger, after we look to give forgiveness? So one element is sometimes finding expression to the appropriate party. So an individual might wish later down the road to confront their abuser. Will they get an apology? Will there be justice at least? Sometimes an individual, a perpetrator who does a grave wrong, is imprisoned. And some of these things can help, because individuals are not always going to get the apology they deserve. And you still have to be able to forgive, to let go for your own good, not necessarily their good. If not, if that apology is not given after it's been requested, there's various ways that psychologists and counselors can work through Gestalt chairs technique, where you imagine yourself talking to the perpetrator. A process of rituals is another way. One can release anger, maybe memorials or ways individual physically manifests letting go of something. Belief in a higher power. Faith, especially within Western traditions, teach forgiveness, to let it go. And in doing so, again, that's not stating that the offense is being minimized or forgotten, but forgiven. As the higher deity forgives the individual, you forgive others and you let it go. And in that forgiveness, you attempt to find some type of healing. But regardless, if you're suffering, or an individual suffering from trauma or PTSD, it has to be talked about. If it's not talked about, then that dissociated material isn't going to be processed. And then issues of guilt or rage or anger will never get brought up because you're not discussing it. So the only way to resolve the anger is first to discuss what happened with the professional, to experience that anger, to understand that anger, to ensure that it's proportionate, I should say, and where it's aimed, if it's not displaced. So try to find forgiveness, to understand the nature of forgiveness, not minimizing or condoning or forgetting, but allowing that forgiveness to heal oneself, and then to find the appropriate actions to carry that out. So these are all elements to healing from trauma due to the anger that may persist because of the event itself. So we are the American Institute of Healthcare Professionals. You can review our anger management certification program. There is a link to it. Our email is info@aihcp.org, and our phone number is 330-652-7400. 7776. And the material and sources used for this come from the Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder source book. There is a good chapter on that, on anger due to unresolved trauma. And I recommend that if you're taking any of the stress management or anger management courses with us, or you're just interested in learning more about this subject, that you consult that textbook and learn more. I'd like to thank you for listening today, and have a good day.